evening, and welcome to our first Meet the Candidates event for the city of Saratoga Springs. The first one meaning there'll be a second one tomorrow night. All candidates on the ballot for Supervisor, Commissioner of Public Safety, and Commissioner of Finance were invited. This event was organized by the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County. We want to thank Saratoga Springs School District for arranging for the use of this beautiful auditorium. Before we begin tonight, I want to remind everyone to turn off all their electronic equipment. This includes candidates and their staff. We ask that there be no videos from the audience. This event will be videoed and posted on our website in its entirety, if possible. And the video taken tonight is a property of the League and can only be used by the League or licensed media. It may not be used by the candidates. My name is Ann Krill, and I will be your moderator tonight. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County, and I reside in the town of Wilton. The League of Women Voters of Saratoga County is a nonpartisan, volunteer, political organization dedicated to the informed and responsible participation of citizens in government. The League never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. That has been League policy since 1920. Membership is open to anyone who's eligible to register to vote, whether male or female. Please consider joining. Candidates have been asked not to distribute campaign literature. There is a designated table outside the room. Candidates and audience, remember that this is not an event. Excuse me? Oh, I heard something. Funny ears. This is not an event for campaigning, so no hats, pins, or exhorting people to vote for a particular party or candidate. It's League policy to hold forums only for contested elections, when more than one candidate is present at the event. So if there are any candidates who are running and are here tonight and who are unopposed, they're welcome to stand and introduce themselves now, in case anyone would like to talk to you afterwards, and I can't see very well. There's lights in my eyes. Okay? There are only two that I know of. Okay. I realize that many people in the audience tonight may hold strong partisan views. However, I will insist that the candidates and the audience treat each other with respect. No personal attacks will be allowed. I also ask the audience to hold its applause until the candidates finish their closing statements for each segment. I will use this gavel to enforce the ground rules. The job of the audience is to listen and to ask questions on the written cards. We will be taking written questions this evening, and the forms have been given to you, and I know there have been many given in already. Questions should be concise and to the point, should be directed to all candidates. However, if a question is directed to one candidate, the other candidates may respond as well. We may not have time for all the questions. Our vetting staff is ensuring that the questions with the most interest get asked first. They may combine some questions for efficiency and to avoid repetition. They will also make sure that the questions are clear and readable so that I can read them and contain no personal attacks or inappropriate language. Okay, it looks like we can still use more questions, so if you have a question in mind, if it comes to you, raise your hand and a runner will get up. There you go. Timers for this evening's event are in the front row, right down there. They will hold up cards for the candidates to glance at. Green means 1 minute is left. Yellow means 30 seconds is left, and red means time to stop. And I will give you time to finish your sentence. All right? Tonight's event will be divided into 3 segments. As you can see, we're starting with supervisors, and that will be followed by public safety, and then Commissioner of Finance. There will be a very brief pause between each session while the candidates take their places. This is going to be a good time for any other new questions to be picked up during the transition time. And we're asked that the candidates move swiftly so that we can give the most time for the candidates' answers to the issues. The candidates for the two supervisor positions for the City of Saratoga Springs are, and these are in alphabetical order: Tara Gaston, she's running on the Democratic and Working Families line. Stephen Mittler, he is running on the Republican, Conservative, and Libertarian. I wasn't supposed to say that. Well, just so you know where to find it on the ballot. Matt Beach is running on the Republican, Conservative, and Independence lines. And I also want to mention briefly that there will be early voting. So November 5th is election day, but next Saturday you can vote, starting the 26th. Look up that information. It's outside or it's at the Board of Elections. You can call them. Now it is time to hear the 2-minute opening statements, and they have drawn lots, and they have determined that Matt is going to go first.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for inviting me to this forum tonight, and I just want to also thank Supervisor Gaston and Steve Mittler for also participating tonight. And thank you for attending this evening and asking us the pertinent questions for our respective races. It's been an honor and a pleasure having the opportunity to serve you as supervisor for the past 12 years. When I first ran for office, I promised you that I would propose initiatives that would improve our city and county's quality of life and to work with neighboring communities to keep Saratoga County among the lowest taxed counties in New York State. First off, I started the Supervisors Trails Committee, which has created over 10 miles of hiking trails on county forest land. Over the years, I was instrumental in getting almost $150,000 in county matching funds to the city for open space and trail projects. I also served as the chairman of the city's Open Space Advisory Committee when we recommended the purchase of the Pitney Meadows Community Farm, and we worked hard on making recommendations toward the conservation easement that now defines the scope of use for the farm. When I was first elected, I noticed that Saratoga County was not up to date with the latest technology and did not operate in an efficient manner, especially our payroll process for employees. With that, I chaired the Technology Ad Hoc Committee at the county level, and we worked to incorporate technology considerations into decisions made by all our county departments. And we implemented an automated time and attendance system at the county that fixed many of our inefficiencies around that process and saved taxpayers money. Having served on all the county standing committees, I have a broad understanding of county operations. It was a distinct honor to be named the chairman of the Board of Supervisors of 2015. I am proud to represent the Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County on committees both at the national and state level. I've been engaged with our community, serving on several different boards and committees around the city, most recently as president of the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. My plan are to continue to do things that enhance our quality of life in this fast-growing city and county, working not just on the big projects, but making sure that our county departments that help those most in need receive support from the Board of Supervisors to make sure the county is meeting the needs of all of our residents. I will do my best to serve the residents of the city honorably and with integrity and honesty and with openness and responsiveness to your needs.
Thank you, Matt. Now it is time for Tara, opening statement.
Pardon? Hi, I'm Tara Gaston, and I'm running for re-election as your supervisor for the City of Saratoga Springs. When I arrived at the board nearly 2 years ago, I had high hopes. Public service is in my blood, and I was looking forward to getting some work done. I knew there would be some changes that needed to happen, but I was sorely disappointed once I joined the board. For starters, there's virtually no transparency or accountability. There are no open public comment periods, such as we have in the city itself. The agenda isn't published, until a few hours before the meeting, but if you want to comment on something we're doing, you have to register 24 hours in advance. And I'd like to know how that was going to work. The public, even journalists, don't get to see resolutions before we vote on them. Supervisors often don't. Only the titles are shared. If you're a concerned resident, how are you going to know what we're doing? And how are you going to know what your supervisor's actually voting on? No one asks questions in committee meetings. Everything pretty much gets rubber stamped because it's dealt with in caucuses that I don't attend. That's not how good government works, and it's not how I operate. Very few people understand how the county government works, and that's a feature, not a bug. I release my schedule. I meet with any constituent who asks. I've held public forums. I share documents, and I don't take part in secret caucuses. When votes come up with a potential radical impact on my community, I speak up so that you can tell us, so you can tell me what you think about it and how I should vote. Pretty soon after I joined, some people got annoyed about that. I've been the brunt of a few mean Facebook posts, including some about my gender. My pronouns are she and her, by the way, and my family situation. When my mom asks how I'm doing, I just say it's fuel for the fire. You know what else fuels me? The mom who's grateful that I connected her to services for her newborn. It's a gentleman without a home who is grateful that someone talks to him like a person and tries to help him find a place to live, a job, and services. It's the school teacher who appreciates me asking questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Your time's up. Remember what you have to say, and you can say it later. I'm sure you'll have another time. Okay. Stephen, have your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you all for coming tonight. I've always wanted to run for public office, but my corporate career kept me out of the area, traveling weekly to all ends of the country. That's changed, and I am having a blast as I enjoy this new endeavor. As the only candidate not enrolled with any party, I have focused my efforts on every single party in the city. The support has been overwhelming. I hear things every day like, "It's nice to meet you. I've seen your signs," which there are a few. Or, "We need more people like you to run. You've certainly got my vote." Voters from the Independence Party, Democrats, Republicans, working families, conservatives, libertarian, and no official party voters have changed their mind on which two candidates they will vote for, based on these conversations at the doors and my ideas on how to continue to make the county prosper. This includes former committee members of the city and county Republican and Democratic parties. I was flattered to be asked by members of both parties to explore running for mayor, accounts, finance, public works, public safety, and supervisor. The city and the current city council are operating at a pace that I've never seen before. They are getting things done. I felt I could best represent the city at the county to ensure that the county supervisor role did not run unopposed. I have a 20-year career leading organizations, building new organizations, and breaking down dysfunctional organizations while holding those organizations accountable to performance goals and to deliver service at or under budget. For years, I have plowed through corporate politics to build consensus and get things done. That means developing and sharing ideas, listening to other parties, understanding their point of view, and even when I didn't agree with their ideas, together we led and supported the ultimate decision. Since my decision to run for supervisor, I have learned that the same set of skills is needed to maneuver local politics. I'm extremely well qualified to learn, listen, and deliver for you on the first day of work as your county supervisor.
Okay, thank you, Steve. All right. Thank you for your opening statements. It's time now for questions. You have a minute and a half to respond, and you're not required to respond. You may pass if you wish. And so that the audience knows as well, each candidate has been given 2 red cards, and that means that they can add 1 minute to their remarks, or they can respond to someone else's remarks. Note that in your programs it says a minute and a half. That's incorrect. The letter that went out to you said 1 minute, and it's 1 minute that will be added for the red cards. They cannot be used in the opening or closing statements. So questions will be directed to the candidates in rotation so that each candidate has a chance to respond first. So the first question will go to Matt Beach first. The question is, what is the most important problem the county supervisors must address in the coming year?
Okay, thank you for that question. I would say that there's really, well, they want the most important problem. I think there's two problems, actually. I think the first is much a larger problem, which is really the general and overall rapid pace of growth that we have in Saratoga County. I think that as a fast-growing county, we have to make sure that we maintain things. We have to encourage some growth, but we also need to be able to preserve the things that we have here that make the quality of life that we have here good as it is. So, one of the things I've always been involved in, of course, and I mentioned it in my opening statement, is the trails and open space projects that we've been involved in. It's a good way to kind of push against the pace of growth that we have in this county. They are developing, especially in the outer areas outside of Saratoga Springs and even in the city, at a very rapid pace. So, trying to kind of preserve the things that make us that we have a good quality of life with is something we have to work on, but we also need to make sure that we are growing appropriately. I think the second thing we have to deal with, which is actually a little more direct to Saratoga Springs, is, and really I think the biggest issue right now is the issue of homelessness in our city as well as in our county. As you may or may not know, Code Blue is a county mandate from the state, so Saratoga County and our Board of Supervisors has to have some involvement in the Code Blue situation, but I think we also need to look forward toward a more comprehensive more comprehensive solution to dealing with homelessness within Saratoga County, whether that means more services or a permanent location somewhere in the county.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Tara?
I think the most important issue for the supervisors in the upcoming year is planning for resiliency. That means both in our people, in our structures, and as we look forward to our growth and development. If you're planning for resiliency properly, you are counting on where people are moving, where are they living, where are they not living. You're looking at what businesses come into the community. You're looking at what they're spending and, frankly, what the government is giving them to move here, or what services we're offering for them. And you're looking at climate change, and you're looking at the impact of that on our communities. You're looking at weather, emergency planning. Every aspect of the Board of Supervisors is covered under that. And unfortunately, a lot of what we do is very reactive, and we spend a lot more money than necessary that way. If we are housing people appropriately, if we are providing appropriate medical care and public health services, our costs for public safety and administration go way down, to a quarter even. That means fewer tax dollars that you're spending, or fewer that you're having taken from you, and fewer that we're spending on the County Board of Supervisors. I think if we're not planning for resiliency, we're basically throwing away money.
Thank you, Tara. Steve?
When I was asked to run and decided to run, I chose to do that because living here as a lifelong county resident, we all know the homeless population has exploded. We've created an environment where we can support, and we're the epicenter of where we can support folks that are in need of housing. There are, of course, the conversations that have started within this community that talk about housing first. I talk about solution first because we have a short-term need that we need to focus on before we can get into the deeper solution of housing first. The homeless population is a county issue. As Matt said, the county is ultimately responsible to make sure that there's Code Blue housing for our homeless population. Meg Kelly and Karen Gregory from Shelters of Saratoga, which is a nonprofit, and the other members of the City Council have taken it upon themselves to make sure there was an appropriate facility to house our homeless population, and it's not going to be ready until December 1st. The mandate is November 1st. The county has failed the homeless population, and we need to make sure that that is the #1 priority for our supervisors in 2020, is to get it done and find a permanent location.
Thank you, Steve. Next question goes first to Tara. The question is, what opportunities do you see for making local government and services more effective and/or efficient?
Ooh, perfect. So first, we need to increase our use of technology on the county level. Right now, we have people doing jobs that are much better done by machines, such as posting agendas in minutes. That's not to say that we need to get rid of county staff. We're strapped as it is and barely running with the people that we have, which is great in that we're being efficient with our people. But we need to make sure that their jobs are focused on the work that people are best doing. That's helping you when you come in and you want to ask for a favor card or to have the county hold your DD 214. Or that's when you want to come to the Board of Supervisors to figure out when we meet and where we meet and how even that works. That's what people need to be doing. Technology needs to be developing resolutions for review by the county attorney and county administrator, not being written by them. It means posting the minutes and agendas immediately so that before we meet and before we make a decision on something, you know what's going to happen and you know the full text of it. You don't have to guess on how much money we're spending or where it's coming from. I think if we use technology properly in our county, we can save a lot of money, a lot of time, and get things done for our community a lot better than we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Steve?
Can you repeat the question?
What opportunities, timers, wait till I re-ask the question. What opportunities do you see for making local government and services more effective and or efficient?
Thank you. I think there's a lot of redundancy between the city and the county that takes place on a regular basis. So when I first started interviewing with the different committees and the different parties, one of the parties actually said, can you please explain what a county supervisor does? And I started to go into my long-winded, well, here's what I think the position is, and they were truly asking, no, please tell us, what does a county supervisor do? They didn't know, so they were asking the question in a different way. That's important. We need to make sure that as we're representing the city of Saratoga Springs at the county level, that we're integrated with the city council, so we're representing the needs of the city and we mirror what the city is trying to accomplish. If we do that, we don't have the same redundancy. I agree with Tara, transparency is extremely important. I think the city's done a great job. We need to bring those best practices and those good ideas to the county.
Thank you, Steve. Matt?
Hello? So I would definitely agree that, and one of the things that I definitely worked on as a county supervisor was trying to get us more in tune with technology. I appreciate Supervisor Gaston's answer. The county can do a better job at being a little more open in our meetings, and I would support any initiative to go forward with that. The problem is that it's a lot of convincing the other towns and the other communities and the other voting members of the Board of Supervisors that that's an important issue. I'm more than happy to advocate for that, but I'm not sure how far I will get when it comes to convincing them that they have to do anything. So as your supervisor, I'm certainly completely on board with that, but it's much more difficult to convince supervisors from other communities who just don't see it as a priority, as well as the administration. But in terms of services directly, I think one of the major challenges we have as a county is really finding a path to get folks the avenue to the services. We have services available in Saratoga County. They are there. But the people who need those services have trouble sometimes navigating the system, and we need to do a better job of getting those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next question goes first to Steve. Can you describe a situation in which you reached across the partisan divide to solve a specific problem?
I'm endorsed by the Republicans, the Independence Party, Conservative, and Libertarian parties. I've worked in corporate America creating an opportunity for employees to be able to move through and navigate through these large organizations and find policy truly within the county, within the company that made sense. We were able to listen, we were able to move and change our policy and our strategies, whether it be with human resources, compensation, all large organizations that require a consensus or working together. I see doing the same thing in a bipartisan way. And again, I'll remind you that I'm endorsed by the Republicans, the Independents, the Conservative, and the Libertarian parties.
Thank you, Steve. Next is Matt.
Okay. I would say that there's a few different examples I can probably give for this. One of the things that I had done early on is back in 2012, Commissioner Frank and myself had gotten together. We had noticed that there were some issues with the South Broadway neighborhood and the lack of development that we have out there. We co-chaired that committee, which actually had members that were appointed by all of the city council members and both supervisors on that committee to work together to try to come up with some recommendations for that area. Another issue that I worked with in a bipartisan way on was serving as the chairman of the city's open space committee. I was actually appointed by Mayor Yepsen to that. So she had the confidence in me, and I worked with her to make sure that we did the right thing when it came to the open space committee in the city. And lastly, and most recently, although it hasn't really moved as far as I would have hoped, Mayor Kelly and I have been working on a community development block grant program and trying to get the county to become a player within that. I can probably name a few other examples where I've worked with folks from the other side of the aisle to try to get things done for the city. I continue to commit myself to that. Again, it doesn't matter, the problems don't have a party. The solutions we have to work together on. So I will continue to do that as supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Tara?
Well, I'd like to say the most prescient one is I'm sitting next to him. Matt and I meet regularly to talk about the concerns that we have in the city and what's coming up at the county that may impact the city. So, I don't know, I'll say it, even if you want. Additionally, one of the first things I did when I joined the Board of Supervisors was request meetings with every single department that the county oversees or has a significant relationship with, including the Water Authority, Animal Shelter, Weights and Measures, a bunch you probably don't even know are there. And that included the ones that are led by elected Republicans. Because as a representative of the city, my job is not to represent my party. My job is to represent the people who reside in my city. And so my job was to go to each of them and say, hey, what's going on? What are your priorities? What have you needed? What do you foresee needing in the future? So that I could make decisions and that I could communicate with them with that knowledge, regardless of their party. Because honestly, it doesn't matter. Once you're in the position, you should be working with everybody around you, irrespective. I mean, I know the party affiliations of the people on the Board of Supervisors, but it never comes up. I'll talk to Jack Lawler the same as I talk to Tom Richardson, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Thank you, Tara. All right, the next question goes like this. How can or what intertown, intervillage, intercity synergies can be achieved? That's a little bit, and it goes on to say, how do you work on county issues that impact us? And that, okay, you're right, Matt, you first.
Okay, so yeah, as a supervisor, I think part of the job is that you represent the city of Saratoga Springs at the county level. So basically, it's kind of, the way the county government is set up is really almost like an association of towns and cities. So really, most everything we do is kind of in that realm, where it's working with other communities to kind of share services that we spread among the entire population. But I guess I would say that, a lot of that does happen on the local level. I do know that, for example, the town of Wilton and the city of Saratoga Springs will share, paving equipment or trucks, or one town will plow part of the road that's in another town, and they will plow part of our road that's in our town because logistically it just makes sense. Their plow is at the town line, and our plow happens to be over at their town line. So we already kind of do that a little bit, but it really happens more at the local level. As a supervisor, I don't get directly involved in that as much, but the commissioners do. And then so when the towns have those needs, they reach out directly more or less to the commissioners to take care of that. But I would say that really, again, the majority of my job is dealing with other towns and villages and the other city in our county, and just working with them to make sure that we're meeting the needs of everybody when we pass resolutions and whatnot at Saratoga County. So thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
So I would agree it's really important for us to advocate for Saratoga Springs, and that includes when the landfill funding came up, Matt and I had to talk about what Saratoga Springs should get, what should the other municipalities get, and to really advocate for our city when that funding. But there are a lot of times when municipalities have to work together, and one of those is on Code Blue and public health services. That's an entire countywide issue, and our department covers everyone in this county. So we have to make sure that the services are provided to everyone, and that means in Saratoga Springs, which is a hub of population and where there's a lot of public transportation accessible. It also means in Hadley or Day, where there's not as much. And so we have to work together to make sure that we know how many people in those areas are needing those services, How many people are complaining about the services that we're receiving or grateful? Maybe there are over-services in an area. I know that we're moving public health services from Saratoga Springs to Boston Spa at the farm. There's no public transportation access. So one of the things that I've been doing is talking to each supervisor and each municipality to make sure that we know who in each area needs those services so that we can make sure that people have access to them. And that, frankly, just requires a lot of talking with each other.
Thank you, Tara. Steve?
Similarly, when I rode with Shelters of Saratoga, Karen Gregory and their outreach van, I was floored at how gracious the folks that we were serving were. They never took more than they needed to, and they thought that it was important if there was something that they didn't quite have a need for yet, like a sleeping bag, that it was saved for somebody else. That van drives from South Glens Falls to the border of Clifton Park to exit 9. They service folks who are living in the woods. They service folks who are living in their cars. They focus their services on folks who are living in motels along Route 9 and off of various exits. We've got to work as a county to make sure that we're solving this issue. Secondly, working with the school district, working with Department of Mental Health, and working with Saratoga Hospital, we've got to be able to bring our community together when it comes to the school board, divisiveness, and make sure that we're having conversations like we are tonight, that we're not having conversations that continue to pit neighbor against neighbor. I have a plan to bring the Saratoga Hospital into the conversation. Every time a child struggles with mental illness and they go through the emergency room, they're discharged without a plan of what they should do at school, what the parents should do to talk to counselors. Saratoga Hospital is on board with that. Mike Patton from the school is on board with that. And our Department of Mental Health wants to be able to take that and spread those ideas to other school districts in the county.
Thank you, Steve. I want to thank the audience for the good questions that you have put up forth. We've asked so far 4 questions, and I still have 4 more good questions that the vetters have found. So we're going to give this question next the time that you need, but let's keep it short if you can. I'm not going to...
Well, that's only slightly verified.
And then I'm going to have 3 questions that's going to require a yes or no. It's not exactly fair, but we'll see. And then we'll have time for the closing statements. All right? The next one is about homelessness. The question says, what has been your experience so far with serving our homeless population? What do you propose we do next to better serve a population that is in need of direct support from our government? Let's see. Tara.
I don't think it was a good idea to say take the time you need. But I'll work on it. So we have a significant problem in our community, in people who don't have access to housing. And sometimes that means the people who we all think of as homeless. We see them hanging out by the Woodlawn Garage. But it also means people who are couch surfing. It means the nearly 200 students in Saratoga Springs schools who don't have a home that they can call theirs. Getting time now, sorry. There's a really easy answer to solving this. Chronic homelessness is best solved with the Housing First model. It's worked around the country. It's worked in little towns and it's worked in big cities. You put someone in housing irrespective of their sobriety, irrespective of whether they are seeking mental health treatment. You treat them with dignity. You put them in a place to live, and they do better. They thrive. They go to addiction services. They get jobs. Their problems are a little easier to deal with, just like they would be for the rest of us. When your hot water runs out, don't you get a little cranky and it's a little harder to deal with the stuff around you? Imagine if you never had that. It's a real easy thing to fix, and we're not doing it. We're not doing it because of NIMBYs. We're not doing it because of people who don't want to spend the money. We're not doing it because of people who believe it's a handout. In my government, we work for everybody in our community. Whether you can donate to my campaign or whether you show up at my meetings or not. That's what I think we should be working towards. We should be working towards a Housing First model, which Hey, maybe we solve chronic homelessness and it turns into affordable housing, apartment units. Fantastic. I would love nothing more and be no more prouder of my city and my community than if we become a model for ending chronic homelessness and solving the affordable housing issue. We can do it. We've got the people, we've got the money, and we've got the heart. I want to see us do it here, and I want to change the county and keep moving in that direction. I've been doing it. I've gone out with Shelters of Saratoga in February in knee-deep snow. I've gone out with a van, and I've just sat and talked with people on the benches. They're just people. They're just like us. That's really all I've got to say. If their people doesn't help solve the problem and move you towards it, I don't know what else I have.
Thank you, Tara. Steve?
I think I've spoken a lot about the homeless issue and my thoughts for how we can try to work towards a solution that creates an environment where they have shelter. I see the more immediate need for shelter and solutions for shelter. We've got the folks that want to help. We need to find some community members that are able to also step up. But there's a lot of good ideas out there. I do disagree with Tara that we can do housing first. I think we've got to be able to shelter our homeless population. Going to, as Tara said, going to the woods and beeping the horn 3 times to see homeless folks come out of the woods by the train station, again, was very, very humbling. They live in tents. I purchased one of those tents April of this year to demonstrate it's no larger than one of these placards up here, and that's what Shelters of Saratoga has as a solution right now to be able to hand out to the homeless when Code Blue ultimately closes up for the year. So we've got to find folks that also support from the business community where we can try to put a shelter. I do fully support the not in my backyard without having conversations with the communities, not to arrive to a particular destination and simply announce that a Code Blue shelter is being set up in their backyard. I also support that we need to have a 365-day a year shelter to help service our homeless population, and it needs to happen from South Glens Falls to the town of Day to Mechanicville to Half Moon.
Thank you, Steve. Matt?
I was unlucky to go number 3rd in this. I mean, there's not much more I can say other than I would support both positions from both candidates on this. Tara and I have worked together on the Code Blue situation, and we are also working with the city as well as Shelters of Saratoga on a permanent homelessness solution in this county. I think the only thing that I would really add to those great ideas, and I think I would be supportive of working toward them, is that I think we do need to make sure that we have more than just mental health services or public health services at a location. The county does workforce training and development. Our veterans agency is also a county agency, and both of those agencies as well need to be involved in it, as well as public health, because that's another facet of this that is out there. And really that's really, I think, what it boils down to at the end of the day. This is a county problem. And the county does need to step up. Myself and Tara has discussed this a little bit. I'm in the majority of the Board of Supervisors. I need to convince my colleagues to move this thing forward from the Public Health Committee on up. So I would be committed to do that as your supervisor going forward, if I'm lucky enough to be reelected. And we do all need to work together. Again, this is not a Democrat-Republican problem. This is a problem for everybody, and we all need to get together and work on this no matter what level we are at in government. So again, I am committed to doing whatever it takes to get this problem solved. It is the biggest issue, I think, right now in Saratoga Springs, at least, and maybe in the whole county. And so it is something we all need to focus on. So again, I'm committed to doing all of that going forward, if I'm lucky enough to continue to do so.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. We have a red card, so another minute, timers.
Surprise. So first off, Housing First does deal with the immediate housing problem. It's literally in the name. Housing first. You put people in housing, you worry about the rest later. We have plenty of units in Saratoga Springs and outside of Saratoga Springs in the county that we can put people into. It's not a matter of having to wait or not. We can get this done right now. As for what we've been doing on Code Blue, I've been working on it. I created the first subcommittee, I got permission to create the first subcommittee on Code Blue at the County Board of Supervisors because there hadn't been one. I'm the first one that focused the board's attention towards that issue. I'm going to keep fighting for it, and that doesn't matter who on the board is with it or not, because that's our job. And I'm going to keep going out with Code Blue. I'm going to keep going out and meeting people, whether I'm with shelters or not. We've got to keep working towards this, and Housing First is literally the expert way to do this.
Okay. Anyone else? Steve? One more minute.
We each have one more. Again, I do agree that Housing First is a great solution when we can get to it, and not to say that it's an environment of wanting to get around to it. It's being able to find the locations where we can create Housing First in a non-sober environment. Absolutely agree with that support. Secondly is we've got to, as I mentioned before, have a representation where Code Blue meets the expectations of the state mandate on time and use the budget dollars from the state to make sure we have a facility that gets done and houses our homeless population from November 1st to April 1st, making sure they have the needs. It should not be the responsibility of Shelters of Saratoga. It should not be the responsibility of Shelters of Saratoga. They're a nonprofit agency that has come forth and stepped forward to help our community. It's the city's issue that we now need the county help for. And again, we need help from exit 17 to the Twin Bridges, from Sacandaga Lake to Schuylerville.
Well, thank you, Steve. Okay, any more red cards? Okay. All right. I have a couple of questions here. They're not frivolous questions, but we're going to have a yes and no answer. So, given what you've got, so we're going to start with Steve. Steve will be first, and then Matt. So, do you or do you not support legalizing adult use of marijuana? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Steve? Sorry.
Yes again.
Yes again.
Wait a minute.
Double plus yes?
Where are we?
Everyone says yes.
We're all agreed.
Everyone says yes.
The next question is a little more complicated, but it's still yes or no. Okay, here's the question, what it says. Who has endorsed you, and what does this mean for you as a candidate? So you need to tell us a few words. A few words. No more than 30 seconds. Okay? And who is first? All right, Steve goes first.
Great. So again, as I've already mentioned, I am endorsed by the Republican Party, the Independence Party, Conservative Party, Libertarian Party. I also just received today the endorsement from the Saratoga Springs Police Department, PBA. I have a number of other endorsements that are planned to come out between now and Election Day, so that people can continue to make their choice and specifically have them time to come out over the next 10 days. I'd like to also point out, I shouldn't do that. Thank you.
That's it, okay. All right. Matt, that was pretty good.
My endorsements are the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, and the Independence Party. I've gotten those endorsements over the years from all three of them, and I'm greatly appreciative of their endorsements of me over the years. I also just got the endorsement from the Saratoga Springs Police PBA, and again, I thank them as well for their support. Again, I just think that, I am a registered Republican, so I do lean toward those parties, and again, I appreciate their support. Again, I will work with anyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I've been endorsed by the Democratic and Working Families Party, the Capital District Democrats of Democratic Socialists of America, the New York League of Conservation Voters, Eleanor's Legacy, Capital Women, local labor organizations, and I'm probably going to get in trouble because there are a few already up on my website that I forgot. I'm really sorry. Please, nobody take your money back. What it means for me is I'm the only progressive on the Board of Supervisors. I'm the only person pushing for transparency. I'm the only person demanding accountability and answers from people. and I'm the only person who's working from the bottom up for the people in our community. That's what it means.
Okay, so we have one more question, and then we're going to go on to closing statements, which will be for 1 minute. This question, I'm going to read it as is, but I'm going to make you shorten it. It says, how do you feel about democratic socialism? I just want to know if you're for or against. We're starting with Matt. We're starting with Matt.
Pass.
Can I take his time?
No, yes or no? You're for or against?
Come on. For or against? That's not a...
Your remarks to your closing statement.
For?
We have 2 more segments to do tonight.
For? I mean, it's a bizarre question, but for.
I'm sorry. It's my fault, but we're out of time. Okay. Steve.
It does concern me. I think that we all have certain areas that we want to help deliver in the county.
Yes, it
Yes, it was yes or no. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought Sarah was.
Where's my head?
No.
Okay. Okay. And I want to thank you, audience, for your questions. If your question was not asked, you can see the time is upon us. We do have 2 more segments, so maybe your question will be in the next group. Time for closing statements, and we start with that. 1 minute.
Okay. Thank you again to the League for inviting me to this forum, and I'm glad that I've had an opportunity to answer questions and talk about the issues that matter to the voters of our city. As a 5th-generation Saratogian with a family that has instilled in me the dedication to our community and the desire to serve the public, I am so happy to have had the opportunity to represent our city at the county level. There have been many accomplishments over the years, and I have gained experience and attained positions of leadership through my experiences in work serving you as supervisor. I will continue to approach this job the same way I always have. I will be responsive to constituent needs, I will act with honesty and integrity, and I will effectively address the issues of the day. We still have much to do. The issues of homelessness, growth and development, housing affordability, among others, are some of the challenges we can continue to face as a community. I believe that the best way to succeed is to tackle problems in a bipartisan way and to work together in a positive manner. My hope is that we as your leaders can all focus on the same lofty goals for our city's future and serve with a sense of purpose, cooperation, and civility. The residents of our city deserve nothing less. I ask again for your support at this election to have the honor of continuing to serve the residents of Saratoga Springs at the county level. I humbly ask for your vote again this year, either through early voting beginning this Saturday, October 26th, or on Election Day itself, November 5th.
Thank you, Matt. Tara?
All right, the fuel for my opening statement is still burning. So, some people in our county are prospering, but many are not. That's why I fought for the first Code Blue subcommittee in the county, and that's why I fought for increased public transportation access to both our public health services that other supervisors voted to move out of our city, and for increased commuter traffic. I want to even increase our public health services to a full-time department, which is what other counties our size have. I'm a fiscal progressive that believes in a lean, efficient government that builds prosperity from the bottom up. That's why I fight to streamline economic development funding and focus on growing small and local businesses and leveraging innovations in technology. I want to develop a countywide resiliency plan looking at the changing climate, population growth, economic development, and agriculture, and continuing to build a strong and resilient Saratoga County. I want to continue my push to make Saratoga County meet the basic standards of open and accountable government that uses your taxpayer dollars wisely. I keep hearing my policies are too progressive for Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County. I don't believe it, and if you don't either, vote Gaston.
Thank you, Tara. Steve?
Clearly, each of us are on the same mission to make Saratoga Springs and Saratoga County one of the best places to live in the state. It's one of the best places to visit, vacation, invite friends to. Politics is rough, but it's a challenge that my career and my upbringing have prepared me for. As a child growing up in Ballston Lake, my parents and my family used to joke that I should be the mayor one day. Well, I'm not there yet, but I am enjoying running, and now my family says I'm exactly where I need to be. As a lifelong county resident, I understand what it's like to live in various parts of the county. I've experienced the growth, some that I've supported, and some that makes me sad. This is critically important life experience that is crucial when making county decisions that affect more than just Saratoga Springs. I'm humbled to be surrounded by so many city residents, county residents, family. I simply ask for your vote on Election Day.
Thank you, Steve. And now you may applaud. Next we have public safety. Please come forward. For the city of Saratoga Springs are, again in alphabetical order, Robin Dalton. She's running on the Republican, Conservative, Libertarian, Independence, and SAM lines. And Kendall Hicks is running on the Democratic line. Once again, we have chosen who is going to go first. Robin will be the first to give her opening statement, and it's time for her 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you all for being here tonight. The most pressing question our residents will answer this election season is, which candidate for Commissioner of Public Safety has the moral authority and character to lead the men and women in uniform proudly serving our city? My father-in-law, Joe Dalton, impressed upon me the importance of being involved in our community. I took his words to heart and have devoted myself to volunteerism in our city over the last decade through work with nonprofits like Saratoga Sponsor Scholar, where I'm a board member, mentor, and fundraiser, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for economically disadvantaged scholars right here in Saratoga Springs High School to help them achieve their dream of going to college. For 9 years, I've served on the Saratoga Hospital Foundation Board and completed numerous capital campaigns in my board capacity, including purchasing an MRI machine for our hospital, a new orthopedic unit, intensive care unit, and lastly, the building of our community health center. I've also been a volunteer with Shelters of Saratoga and Code Blue, and was honored to be the recipient of Shelters of Saratoga's Health, Hope, and Humanity Award this spring. In addition, I've worked with Wellspring, Saratoga Bridges, the Giving Circle, and many other worthy organizations. Over the last 2 years, there's been a disconnect between our community and the Public Safety Department. It takes a dynamic leader to bridge the gap to once again ensure our residents and first responders are working collaboratively and cooperatively. My ability to do this is a matter of record. My top priority as Commissioner of Public Safety will be acting as a strong voice for our police and fire departments at the City Council table, while working to solve our most challenging safety issues, including adding critical officers to our understaffed police force, building a third fire EMS station to serve the Eastern Plateau, a comprehensive approach to helping our homeless population while ensuring our city has a continuous permanent location for Code Blue, school safety, an ongoing issue that I intend to address by working with our police department, school district, and Saratoga County Sheriff Michael Zerlo to ensure our children and their teachers are as safe as possible, as well as the growing opioid addiction that has ravaged our country. It's now at our doorstep and needs to be addressed before it spreads further into the city. I have the ideas,
Thank you. I'm
leadership,
sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next to Kendall, your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this together. This forum is very important, and I appreciate the opportunity for me to speak tonight. This election is historic and monumental. Men like me aren't supposed to run for office in Saratoga Springs. I come from humble origins. My parents worked very hard to raise 5 children on a carpenter's salary. I was not born in wealth and a powerful family. I was raised by parents who taught us that duty, honor, and country is a real thing. My name is Kendall Hicks, and I'm a father, a soldier, a coach, and a working class citizen who has not in, politics was not in my plan. But after 20 years of the same unchanging representation, we must ask, who is Saratoga did the change it for? Each year becomes more challenging and for working class families to get by. Rents get higher and rapid growth and development happens all around us. Yet our income stays the same. It's clear that these changes are not really for us. Safety issues around our city are still unresolved and our citizens are losing trust and confidence in the ability for the police department to keep us safe. We deserve a champion. It's time to fight for Saratoga families that can afford to be here in our city and feel safe and comfortable like all citizens. What Saratoga Springs needs is equal representation in our leadership, affordable housing for our working class citizens, and more walkable and bikeable pathways and roadways. We must also prioritize and protect our green belt and our urban forests. A permanent solution for our homeless in Code Blue, a fire station on the Eastern Plateau, and respect and decent treatment for all citizens, documented or not. Finally, we need to strengthen the relationship between our citizens and our police department by doing outreach programs and more frequent interaction with our community. That's why I'm running for Commissioner of Public Safety. I'll bring a new perspective and unique skill set that I've learned over 30 years in the military.
Thank you, Kendall. All right. It's time to move on to the first question, and Robin will be the first to answer. Okay? Please describe your relevant professional experience that prepares and qualifies you for the position of a Public Safety Commissioner, i.e. Fire and Police. Have you managed teams of people? Please provide specifics.
It's a really excellent question. So with our form of government, we have commissioners that represent departments. Specifically for public safety, we have a commissioner, but we also have a fire chief and a firefighters union. We have a police chief and a police PBA. So we already have experts in our field that are running their departments wonderfully. And what we needed from a commissioner is communication and leadership. We do not need someone coming into the commissioner's office telling the departments, the police department and the fire department, how to work. They are already doing an excellent job. We have an incredibly safe community. What we need is better leadership and communication between the public safety office and the residents of our community. I have demonstrated excellent communication, marketing, and management skills throughout my time in Saratoga. I started and owned my own business where I managed a staff upwards of 25 people. I managed the budget. I started that business and sold it 2 years later very successfully. I also worked in broadcast television where I learned how, 34 seconds. I also worked in broadcast television. I understand media and communication. But most importantly, I've worked in the community with various organizations, whether it's nonprofits or my own business, led groups of people, set budgets, and I know I can bring all of that experience to the Public Safety Commissioner position.
Thank you, Robin. Okay. Yes. Ken.
Great. As I said before, my background is in the United States military. I've worked for over 30 years. I worked for over 30 years working for the United States military, 25 years of that with the New York Army National Guard. Well, I had a dual mission, working for the state and for the federal government. So I had a governor mission and a federal mission for the president. I've served in every national or local deployment from 9/11 to the Haiti Island surge from the ice storms. I've been able to manage and train soldiers for the last 25 years and teach them how to do the same thing. What I can bring to Saratoga Springs significantly is my background in managing people, places, and things. Managing large budgets, managing large groups of people, and giving them unique experiences and best practices that will move us all forward.
Thank you, Kendall. Okay, the next question will go to Kendall first, and I believe this question follows the first question. Have each of you spoken with our police department and fire department, including the chiefs and the union members, to discuss top concerns? And if so, what are they? And how do you plan to address them?
As a regular citizen in this community, have not been able to speak to our police union or the fire union, but I have recently spoken to the chief and spoken to some of the officers. In fact, I was there today and had a tour and spoke to some of the officers about what's important to them. And I asked a specific question that I thought was important to not only me, but some of the citizens. What is our plan for a natural disaster here in our community? And how do we as citizens get that information so that we know what to do and what to expect? I think that's a very important especially in today's society, in today's climate. We as citizens need to know that, number one, that our police department and our local government have a plan. We need to know where to find that plan so we can see it and understand it. And we need to know how to react in those certain circumstances as citizens so that we can collectively, as a community, survive and react properly to these situations.
Thank you, Kendall.
I'm glad that Kendall brought up emergency management because actually the Public Safety Office is required to have an emergency management plan on hand, available to the public and updated every year. I've seen that plan. It's available. It's about 550 pages long, so if you want a little light reading, you're more than welcome to take a peruse, but it is in place and updated every year and available to the public, so we know what to do in the event of a natural disaster or some catastrophic event. Recently, that happened. We had a lightning strike at City Hall, as many of you might be aware of, and the city was able to seamlessly transition into the rec center. That was because we had an emergency management plan in place. Sorry, can you repeat the question again? I know there was more to it. Oh, have you been in touch with? Yes, actually. When I started campaigning back in March, the very first thing I did was think about what the public safety challenges were that face the community and then vet them with our police and fire departments. I spoke to both of our chiefs and have been in regular communication with them. I've also been in touch with the police union and the firemen's union because to me, listening to what the officers experience on the front lines is one of the most crucial things the public safety commissioner can do. Finding out how we can help them, filling whatever deficiencies exist. I mean, that is crucial to being a public safety commissioner and not doing the homework of talking to the officers, talking to the firemen, and talking to the chiefs. I mean, that to me is, actually it was not at all privilege. I made a phone call, a regular phone call, just like anyone else could.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, let's not have comments from the audience, please. Excuse me? Oh, you have a red card? 1 minute. Please.
So like I said earlier, that as a regular citizen, I don't have access or privy to have relationships with the police department and the fire department like some people do. But in fact, I was asked recently by our current commissioner, Peter Martin, to be on our citizen advisory board, where I was able to sit at the table with our police chiefs and ask those certain questions and get certain information so that I can bring that information back to our citizens and have those conversations and spread that information. I think that the Citizen Advisory Board is very important in that respect because we, as the board, are the liaisons between our city and our police department. We act as a voice. We bring certain issues and concerns to the board, and we discuss them, and we disseminate that information as necessary. I think that it's very important that we have that access and be able to bring those issues to the table, because otherwise our citizens don't feel that they have access or the level of communication.
I'm sorry. Okay. Robin has
I'd just like to address something. I'm a wife and a mother, and as far as I know, a regular citizen. Our fire chief and our chief of police are both brand new. I called and introduced myself to them as a regular citizen. I have no special privilege that I'm aware of.
Why are you speaking?
Excuse me, I'm not allowed to speak in this forum. The candidates are here to give their views on the issues. Please be quiet.
I used one of my red cards, which I was told I could use to respond to my candidate's statement.
Is there time to start over now? Yes.
Yeah, reset the clock.
All right. She needs to have extra time. Start over.
I'm sorry, two of my answers have been interrupted by the audience, so I just need some guidance here as to whether or not you want me to start over or how you'd like me to respond.
Right now, you should start over, and the timer should start over. And there will be no more comments from the audience. This is your candidate's time, their chance to tell you how they feel. It is up to you to evaluate.
I appreciate the opportunity to address this question again. I was saying that I'm a wife and I'm a mother of 4 and a regular citizen. Our chief of police and our fire chief are brand new. Joe Dolan was appointed in the spring. Chief Crooks was appointed in September. I called them up, cold called them as a regular citizen, and they were both happy to give me time to talk about what my initiatives were for the public safety department, as were both of the unions when I contacted them.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question. I believe we're going to Robin first. I've kind of lost track. Is that right? I think it's your turn to go first. All right. In what ways will you address the climate emergency and coordinate for the Climate Leadership and Protection Act?
So I'm familiar with the Paris Climate Accord that the City Council approved back, I believe, last year. And I support every initiative in the Paris Climate Accord agreement and pursuing those as a community, whether it comes to reducing our carbon emissions, alternative energy sources. I would point to Commissioner Madigan's solar panel project out on Waddell Avenue as a terrific example of that. I support every initiative possible to become a more a greener and more responsible community in terms of climate change and everything that the Paris Climate Agreement stands for.
Thank you, Robin. And thank you, audience, for being quiet. Kendall?
I also support the Paris Climate Agreement and commend our commissioner for her work in the solar panel project. Our city is doing a fairly good job with our process in developing our green space and maintaining our urban forestry. I think that's really important because, you know, we have a city that's rapidly developing, and when we look at that development, we kind of lose sight of our open space and our green space. And that's what brings people to this city in the first place, because it's so beautiful. And in order for us to maintain that, we have to look at both our development and also our staying power, which keeping this climate and this world, basically our culture and our climate safe. And the only way we can do that is staying up on the technology, as well as maintaining our information and disseminating that information throughout our community, so we can work together in maintaining our climate.
Thank you, Kendall. Next question. What is the, this will go first to Kendall. Right. All right. What is the biggest problem you envision encountering in your role as Commissioner at Public Safety, and how do you envision solving it?
The biggest problem I envision encountering is the willingness for the other side of the table to come to the table with fairness. I have worked in the military in almost every capacity with being able to communicate on all sides with every level of individuals, from higher leadership to lower subordinates. But it takes two to come to the table and have a conversation. And it's conversations like these that we have to be willing to come civilly and be able to work through any issue that we have in our community. This truly is not about me. I humbly submit myself as a public servant, and it's very hard to be a public servant if you've never served anyone before. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. Robin?
As I said before, when I started this process, it was very important to me that I campaigned on issues that I could deliver on. So everything that I've detailed in my platform, I've vetted, whether it was with the fire department, police department, or with the community, or agencies that these issues involve. So when I look at this position, to be quite honest, I'm very confident about my success. My biggest challenge right now would just be getting elected.
Thank you, Robin. All right. Next question goes first to Robin. In addressing the opioid crisis, where do you consider the role of public health ending and public safety beginning?
Well, right now what I'm hearing from the police department is that they're going out and using Narcan far more often than I realized. And their concern is that the residents of our community are not aware that this problem has kind of seeped into our neighborhoods. And so the first step that I think we need to take is addressing our schools and our parents and our educators and talking about what to look for, what symptoms to look for in a child who may be suffering from an opioid issue. Just taking basic steps of education, that is where we need to start approaching this issue, and that's where I think public health stops and public safety begins.
Thank you, Robin. Kendall?
I happen to agree with Robin on the education piece, where public health stops. Of course, it's at the treatment level, but it's definitely an understanding of the community that yes, we have an opioid problem too. The opioid epidemic is a countrywide problem, and I'm sure it's in other countries as well. But we have to face it head on in this community, and the only way that we can do that is together as a community. Our public safety element of that is educating our community on how to react, but also training themselves and properly equipping our police force so that they can go out and properly police and make sure that they do it safely with the right education and with the right equipment, so that we can keep all of our citizens safe, whether or not they have a sobriety problem or not.
Thank you, Kendall. All right, the next question. We'll go first to Kendall. Please describe your position on guns in schools.
Great question. I've been around guns my whole life. In 30 years of being responsible for carrying a weapon, there becomes an understanding that having a weapon comes with a great deal of responsibility. And making sure that you're properly trained, making sure that you're properly equipped and know how to handle that weapon in the proper situations. So weapons in schools, it becomes a great divide for a lot of our community, as we've seen in the past. But my position is that I believe that weapons in schools is not the issue. It's having the right people with the weapons in our schools. We need the officers with the proper training. And having said that, I think that as a community, we need to allow our school board that we just recently elected to do their job and give them the latitude to be able to make the decisions of what schools we have our weapons in and to what capacity. And then it becomes the police department's job to make sure that we have the properly trained individuals to carry those weapons in our school and properly protect our citizens. Properly training, meaning the most up-to-date training that is out there, making sure that they have training to deal with people with mental disabilities, making sure they have training to deal with mass shootings and on lockdowns as well. Our police department is doing a great job, as I know, by being on the Citizen Advisory Board, that they're preparing for this and they have trained officers for this.
Thank you, Kendall. Robin?
So I actually think the biggest problem right now is that there's a major disconnect between our school board and the police department. This issue of guns in schools, I assume we're talking about when it comes to securing our schools and school safety. It started back last year when our school board voted to take away the arms of our school safety officers that we have in schools. This brought up a huge debate within our community that I'm guessing most of you are familiar with. My personal opinion at the time was that was the wrong decision that the school board made. However, over the course of the 6 months that I watched the debate play out over who would be elected to the school board, specifically over this issue of school safety and guns in schools, I became acutely aware that our community was divided almost 50-50 over this issue. Having looked at it from every angle, I think that the most successful approach will be to use a school resource officer in every school, the school resource officer model as laid out by the Sheriff's Department. That means an active duty Sheriff's Department officer in every school trained specifically to meet the specific needs of students and teachers and school safety. I'd like to see an SRO in every one of our city schools.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, the next question goes first to Robin. Yes. What are the most serious challenges you think the city must confront in 10 to 20 years from now? And how can we begin to address them?
10 to 20 years from now?
Looking ahead.
I'm looking ahead the next 2 years because that's what you're voting me in for, a 2-year term. And to me, the most pressing issue over the next 2 years is the understaffing of our police department. I've spent countless hours with our police department on patrol to experience the specific, very nuanced challenges that come with policing Saratoga Springs. And in that capacity, I was shocked to learn how few officers we were able to put on active duty on, for example, a night in July, Saturday night in July when the track is in session. I stood on Caroline Street from midnight to 5 a.m., boots on the ground, with I hesitate to give you the exact number because I actually feel disclosing the exact number, it makes our city more vulnerable, but a very small handful of active duty police officers who are responsible for keeping the visitors safe that we were staring at down Caroline Street, tens of thousands of people, the residents safe, and themselves safe. And they simply don't have the staffing to do so. So we need to increase the amount of officers we have in the police force and increase their funding if we want to make sure our city stays safe. We are right now extremely, extremely vulnerable. I was shocked to see how vulnerable we are, not because of the ability of our officers. Their ability is fantastic. They're professional, they're restrained, and they operate with integrity. What we need is more officers. So that to me is the biggest problem over the next 2 years that I will be solving. 10 to 20. Your guess is as good as mine.
All right, good try. Oh, Kendall?
That is a tough question to look 20 years into the future.
I didn't mean that pejoratively.
But-
Start.
But, you know, as Robin said, you know, our police force is limited on manpower. But manpower alone won't help us if we're not up on the proper technology and the proper training and the proper policies in place to protect our citizens. There is one thing to have a robust force, but it's another thing to have the right individuals in the right place doing the right things. Through technology, through training, through practices, best practices, and research, we will be able to put the right officers in the right place for our city to be safe.
Thank you, Kendall. The next question goes first to Kendall. How can you involve more city residents in decision-making?
Great question. Decision-making from the perspective of our city council, I suppose that question is directed. Involving our citizens means to be more transparent, means to be more accountable, means to disseminate information properly and have it readily available so our citizens can understand and be abreast on what's going on. You know, so I plan to work diligently to make sure that our city council meetings are more comfortable for our citizens to come to and express themselves. I plan to maintain the Citizen Advisory Board to be the liaison between our community and our police force. I plan to maintain an open door policy so our citizens can feel at ease coming to me with any issue that they might want to discuss. I plan to maintain a friendly environment in our department, in our community, so that we can come together as a community and work together to solve our community's problems.
Thank you, Kendall. Robin?
Certainly all of the attributes that Kendall just listed are important for the Public Safety Commissioner, but I would go back to an experience I had that drew me into public safety in the first place, which was back in 2012. I heard about a rape that was reported in my neighborhood, but I didn't hear about it until about a month and a half after it happened. As a resident, I was disturbed and nervous because I thought that was information I should have had right away. So what I did was I got together with a group of people, we wrote a petition, and we presented it to the City Council. And it was heard, and the things that we were asking for in terms of changes in communication and also basic changes in safety, they all happened within the next 2 weeks. And I had this moment of, aha, like we are in a city, but it's not a big enough city where residents with the right motivation and the right skills and communication can't come together and affect change easily. And so that cause and effect is something that I want to communicate to everyone and make sure people understand that there are basic issues, frustrations, lifestyle issues that they might deal with every day that can be solved by the City Council. We just need the communication, the leadership, and the openness to get that done. So that was my aha moment of realizing that I could accomplish a lot as one person on our City Council, and I think that message just needs to get out there to the community and make sure people come in and we can help them.
Okay, thank you, Robin. We're going to have one more question. Remember, you each have a red card still. This question will go first to Robin. And we decided on this question before you gave that answer. So, what have you done in community to benefit individuals and organizations in Saratoga Springs?
Oh gosh, how much time do you have? Well, I began in my opening remarks by talking about the importance of community involvement that was impressed upon me when I moved here 12 years ago. One of the things I'm most proud of, I would talk to is the community health center that we built while I was on the Saratoga Foundation board. It is really a trailblazer in terms of community health. It is located downtown. It offers primary care, medical care, dental, ophthalmology, and mental health services. And it is available for anyone who is underinsured or has no insurance at all. And you come in there and you can get care for your entire family and then a warm handoff to whatever other department that you need services from. So that is one area in which I'm very proud of. I've also, as I said before, worked with Saratoga Sponsor Scholar. I've worked with Shelters of Saratoga. I've worked with Wellspring. I mean, the list is lengthy. But I've worked with all these agencies, and it's been my privilege to get to know them all. But when it comes to being the Commissioner of Public Safety, the key there is that I feel that I'm able to bring all the different skill sets and talents that we have in the city together to sit down at a table and solve problems that are public safety related. I'm a voice who can speak to all those people and bring them together for consensus and making decisions.
Thank you, Robin. Kendall?
Thank you. So after my, well, even while my long career in the military, I became very active in our community where I started out by first coaching Pop Warner football. I've been doing that for the last 15 years. I coached rec basketball and mentor soldiers. And then I was asked by my mentor, Mr. Bob Reed, to join the Frederick Allen Elks Lodge. And when I did that, I found that the lodge was in dire need of repair and just, support. And so Bob and I rolled up our sleeves and we got busy. We started working on the lodge. And we took that initiative that Mayor Yepsen had gotten a neighborhood grant for us, and we completed that grant and helped build the deck at the lodge. Also, I joined the Saratoga Wilton Elks Lodge, and I was actually the first African American ever to be allowed to enter that lodge, and I was also the first African American to be an officer in that lodge currently. And so, bridging those gaps and working in our community, we currently deliver food to the shut-in seniors, and it's a joy to see the faces on those individuals when we bring food to them from the shelters, from the pantries, and we're able to help them extend their monthly food budget because ordinarily they would not be able to reach out and get that food. So we're helping people each and every day, and I enjoy doing that and look forward to doing a lot more in the future for our community, for all of our people.
Thank you, Kendall. I believe that is the end of the question period. We are going to move on to closing statements, and Robin is first.
Well, every community has safety issues, some very unique. I would be remiss not to stress that ours are relatively minimal, thanks to the tireless dedication of our police and fire departments. I can't imagine a better place to raise a family. I have 4 young children, Tommy, Charlie, Alice, and John. They're 3, 6, 8, and 9. I'm profoundly grateful for the experiences and opportunities I've had here over the last several years, and it would be my sincere honor to work on behalf of all Saratogans to be your next Public Safety Commissioner and the first female Public Safety Commissioner in the city of our history, the history of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Kendall?
So, for over 30 years of military service, I developed solutions and complex logistic challenges to manage multi-million-dollar budgets to properly equip our troops. My experience in planning ahead, sweating the details, and learning from the front, leading from the front, manage logistics in a high-risk environment. Like I said before, I've been a part of for the last 30 years, every state activation from 9/11 to the Heidi Allen search to the ice storms in our northern region. I did one tour in Afghanistan where I had a life-changing moment of understanding that we need inclusiveness in our leadership style. We planned and built barracks and provided equipment for soldiers in Afghanistan that we were training to go into the fight. But we didn't include them in the process. We built barracks and we made bunks and we spent lots of money. And the soldiers pushed those bunks into the hallway and rolled out their mats on the floor. We didn't include them in the process. I learned from that lesson and plan to carry that in every leadership decision that I make.
She put up the slides. Thank you for. All right. Thank you. for City of Saratoga Springs are in alphabetical order: Michelle Madigan. She's running on the Working Families, Independence, and SAM lines. And Patty Morrison running on the Democratic line. And now it is time to hear their 2-minute opening statements. And we will start with Patty Morrison.
Can I start?
Yes, please go ahead. Timer start now.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's event. I'd also like to thank the Saratoga Springs Democratic Committee, Eleanor's Legacy, and Capital Women for their endorsement. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for your participation and attendance. I, like everyone in this room, care about the wellness and the progress of our city. I don't consider myself an activist or a politician. I consider myself a concerned citizen who is watching yet another election cycle pass without a choice, and most importantly, without representation for all Saratogians. For far too long, voters have gone into the ballot box with only one name to select from. This is not healthy, so I stepped up. I have a Bachelor's of Science degree in business from Marist College. I have 25 years of experience with Fortune 500 companies. I've managed important product launches with cross-functional teams reporting to me. I've managed large marketing budgets up to $24 million and understand the importance of long-term planning. I've developed a go-to-market strategy for 9 disparate companies with their own P&L. I've developed processes that grew sales revenue and improved customer satisfaction. I'm resourceful with a keen ability to identify inefficiencies and stop wasteful spending. And when elected, I will look at an ethics reform policy changing our initiative. Too often, we've witnessed a lack of accountability and conflicts of interest regarding the way city business is conducted. I will end taxpayer-funded lifetime health care benefits for part-time politicians and push for term limits. I will implement a nepotism disclosure policy such that all city council members must sign if the city is hiring a family member, campaign official, or contributor. I will implement a process to collect unpaid taxes, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Michelle.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thanks to all of you and my opponent, Patty Morrison, for attending tonight. I am Michelle Madigan, your Commissioner of Finance, and I am seeking re-election. I am proud of all that I have accomplished during my tenure, and with your support, I hope to achieve even more. When I first took office, the city's finances were a mess. My predecessor had implemented drastic budget cuts and double-digit property tax increases. Police officers, firefighters, and DPW workers had been needlessly laid off. Essential services were slashed. For 8 years, my adopted budgets have kept property taxes stable. 2 of those budgets decreased property taxes. All ensured the funds needed to function superbly now and into the future. My administration has achieved and maintained a AA+ bond rating due to my strong fiscal management policies. This allowed me to refinance debt twice, saving taxpayers $3.6 million. Excellent planning and budgeting leads to stable tax rates and sound financial health. This leads to excellent bond ratings, reducing our cost to borrow. This works to produce my strong budgets with said stable tax rates. It's a positive feedback loop. I'm a strong proponent of sustainability, project managing the 8,000 solar panels on the city's landfill, ensuring a yearly funding for our annual tree planting projects with Sustainable Saratoga, strongly supporting bike lanes, ensuring project financing for trails. I've set aside city-owned parcels to build 3 affordable homes with Habitat for Humanity, and I've championed and chaired the Saratoga Smart City Commission. I am grateful to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, working families, and other parties who are working hard to re-elect me. They are truly putting city above their parties. And with their support of my One Saratoga campaign, it's a testament to the record that I work well with all local stakeholders during my tenure to get things done for the betterment of Saratoga Springs. On November 5th, my name could be found on Working Families, Independents, and SAM lines. Thank you.
We are going to move on to questions, and the first question will be answered by Patty. Please, okay, this is rather extended question, but I think it all does go together, so do the best you can. Please tell us about your background and qualifications for Commissioner of Finance. For example, what specific institution have you created or overseen? For what institution have you created or overseen a budget? And how can you ensure the sustainability of the revenue sources that are not in the direct control of the finance department?
Per question. Okay. So my experience managing a budget, I've had several budgets over the years. My largest being a $24 million budget when I was at Panasonic. With that budget, I was responsible for working with the entire marketing department to build the budget. And our fiscal year starts on April 1st, so I will need to learn, the calendar will change for me. So I'm already at 30 seconds, okay. So I don't have my glasses on. Oh, I'm sorry. So I have done the budget process from beginning to end, and that is includes responsibility for our annual retainer fees with our agencies, and are working with our sales team, building our goals and objectives, which is the first step in the process, and understanding what revenue is going to come in, and then from there building. I've had to be resourceful. I had a situation where I was asked to do a program, yet I didn't have any money for the program, and I was able to reach out to some of our third-party vendors and tap in. So I am pretty resourceful when it comes to finding monies. When I do my budget, I don't necessarily always spend it all the way through. Like some folks are very typical, and when there's an attitude in the corporate world, sometimes if you don't spend your budget, you won't get it again the next year. I don't apply to that philosophy. Oh, sorry.
Remember what you want to say next time. Okay.
Could you actually repeat that question? It was a two-parter, right?
Yes. Okay, don't start the timing yet. Please tell us about your background and qualifications for Commissioner of Finance, for example, starting a budget, and the other part is sustainability of revenue sources.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a librarian by trade, and I created a national library for the United States Small Business Administration that I managed. I managed the budget and all of the hiring for that, and had representatives within each state that I was responsible for managing for the Small Business Administration. I then moved to Chicago and created and managed a large information center for a commercial finance company, Heller Financial, and that was an $11 million budget that I was directly responsible for, so I felt well qualified to run for Commissioner of Finance. In terms of revenues that the city does not control, the one main revenue source that the city controls, especially the finance commissioner, is property taxes. But all of the other revenues, occupancy tax, mortgage tax, and sales tax, are controlled by having a healthy balance of good economic development and community development. And what I mean by economic development is we need to support things like parking garages and small businesses and business growth. Community development, on the flip side, we need to make sure we're supporting arts and culture, bike lanes, complete streets, great new parks like the dog park and the skateboard park that we're going to be investing in. All of these things combined make our city healthy and happy, a place people want to work, live, and play in, and bring people visiting our community and keep those revenue sources that we don't control coming in strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And you will have the first option at the next question.
Okay.
If elected, what do you plan to accomplish in your upcoming term?
I have several. One of the reasons I'm running again is I have a couple of projects that are in motion right now, and I'd like to see them completed. And one is the fiber project. Having fiber on every single city street to every single resident in the city and to every business is something that we cannot overlook. I've heard people say fiber is a dated technology. It is not dated. Fiber in the ground is the speed of light. It is the opposite of dated technology. This will bring healthy competition to our community. We have the incumbent Time Warner Spectrum, and I have been door to door at thousands of doors, and I'll tell you, people are excited about the notion of competition and additional internet internet service providers. There's also some other sustainability projects I want to work on. One of them is community choice aggregation. I hope to have more time to talk about that later. It's a very important project for residents. It should lower your energy costs, but it requires a city ordinance. And finally, I look forward to putting out 2 more budgets for the city taxpayers of Saratoga Springs.
Thank you, Michelle. Patty? Okay, the question is, if elected, what do you plan to accomplish in your upcoming term?
Sure. So what I look to accomplish, I organize in 2 categories. One, finance and budget initiatives, and the second, legislative and quality of life initiatives. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I would look to enact a nepotism disclosure policy. I would look to end a very costly program for the city of Saratoga Springs, which is lifetime health care benefits for part-time politicians. I would look to collect unpaid taxes. I would look to reinstate some programs that we have had in the past, such as water connection fees. I would look at our internal policies and do internal audits. I would continue the work that is projected for the establishment of a Code Blue permanent, not just a temporary, East Side EMS station. I would look at reducing our risk through the IT department for ransomware and cyber attacks. I would continue to look at bidding out our health insurance. I would look at shared services and have us as a resource for other communities. From a legislative side of the house, I would look at inclusionary zoning policy, introducing an open space referendum. I would also look to improve our communications with town hall meetings. And by that I mean, I am out of time. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm using my red card.
Red card, 1 minute.
So yeah, there's a lot of projects that the City Council works on in its entirety, and I outline those every year in my budget message, and the 5 top priorities of the City Council together, not just singularly the Finance Commissioner, will be working on, of course, our Code Blue. We've had a lot of media and publicity over that, and we will find a permanent solution to Code Blue. We have a temporary solution right now. In terms of communication, we hired a communication specialist, so you will have noticed that our Facebook presence has been more robust. We're telling people more about every time a meeting happens on social media. But Fire EMS has always been a priority. We came very close when Deputy Commissioner Eileen Finneran and Commissioner Chris Mathieson were on board, but we got sued by members of our own community that didn't want to see Fire EMS progress. So now, under Mayor Kelly's leadership, I feel very hopeful that we will have an announcement within the next 2 days or so, a couple of days, on a Fire EMS station coming for the Eastern Plateau. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. The next question goes first to Patty. Should we have a fund balance? How much should it be, and how much is ours? I think they mean ours as in the city. I believe that's what we understand. You want me to repeat the question? Sure. Okay. Should we have a fund balance? How much should it be, and how much is ours? Belonging to the city, I guess.
I believe our fund balance should be 4% of our total revenue. I'm not quite sure I understand the second half of the question. How much should be ours?
How much is ours?
There's a cap.
How much is there? Okay. Perhaps how much is there now?
I don't know if that's a question. I'm going to pass.
Okay. Michelle?
So fund balance is your rainy day fund. All cities should have a fund balance. And the comptroller and GFOA recommend that fund balance should be anywhere between 10 and 15% of your ensuing operating budget year. 4% is too low. When you get into the 4% range, that's when things like the Finance Commissioner is actually legally required to come forward and tell the council and the public how we're going to get it back up to 10%. So as soon as fund balance falls below 10%, that's when people get nervous about things like layoffs and major cutbacks on services. It has always been my goal to have healthy fund balances, and we do have healthy fund balances. Not only do we have healthy fund balances, rainy day funds, we have several reserves that are very healthy that I've been funding. Retirement reserves, reserves for capital expenditures, reserves for buildings. This is how I was able to weather the lightning strike on City Hall. We had healthy reserves, healthy rainy day funds, and I was able to use those funds to keep your taxes stable and also invest in City Hall and make sure that we would be rehabbing City Hall without raising your taxes. So it all, again, as I said, it all plays into one another, but 4% is definitely too low. You would be looking at potentially, having to cut expenses quite considerably without a healthy fund balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next question will go first to Michelle. Can you discuss the important relationship between the school board and the city council?
Yes, there is a relationship between the school board and the city council, and especially when it came to the vote that the school board took last year to remove the armed security guards. I actually had no issue with that at all whatsoever. It was kind of interesting that it looked like I was being portrayed as wanting guns in the schools. Absolutely not. What the city council came out and put forward was a resolution to support the hiring of additional school resource officers. Something that is accepted by New York State government, something that our chief of police have recommended. And the reason I like the notion of a school resource officer, and that's all the city council's resolution said, is because we would pay 25 to 40% of that salary. They would actually still be hired by the city of Saratoga Springs, just like the school resource officer we have right now, Officer Lloyd Davis. They tie right back into the chain of command. So the only thing that the city council had recommended to the school board was an offer of additional school resource officers. And I still stand by that. I have put the money in to train 5 additional school resource officers, and the school board now has actually asked us for those resources. When Lloyd Davis needs to take a vacation or he's sick, we now have people that are trained police officers that can step in for him. So that's all the city council offered, and that's because there's an actual partnership there. They are active duty police officers working for both the city of Saratoga Springs and the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Patty?
So just repeat the question. I want to make sure
Okay, can you discuss the important relationship between the school board and the city council?
Yes. As many of you, probably all of you know, that I currently serve on the school board. And I will tell you, I had a front row seat to all that happened this past year. One being the city council steering out of their lane to have a resolution. We are 2 separate governing bodies. And when we caught wind that there was going to be a resolution, we had the superintendent reach out to the city council and was ignored. We had board members reach out to the city council and was ignored. We had our superintendent and our vice president of the board sit in the audience while the city council enacted a resolution that, quite frankly, residents stood up and spoke up and were ignored. I do know that one of the city council members has said he would not vote the same way that he did. We are 2 separate governing bodies, and the school board would not be steering over into the city council's lane to ask them to do something that was out of their jurisdiction. There is no reason why we needed to have that resolution, and I wish I brought it with me because it does state more than just hiring a school resource officer.
Oh, time to stop. Unless you want to use a red card. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. So this is not true at all. I spoke with Michael Patton on the telephone directly about the resolution. I did not bring the resolution, however, the Commissioner of Public Safety, Peter Martin, brought it. And he was also very supportive of school resource officers. And of course the city police department is involved with school safety. They are part of the whole DIRT program that the school board has. So when an SRO is being recommended and offered to a school board, of course the city council is going to have to pay part of that because they're an active duty police officer. So I'm not sure where my opponent got her information from, but I spoke with the superintendent of schools before bringing the resolution directly. No one was ignored, and we felt that we were right in our lane because it was going to cost city taxpayer dollars. We pay 40% of Officer Lloyd Davis's salary. He is directly in the chain of command of the city police department, and any future school resource officers, even a backup school resource officer, has to be paid for by the city council, by an appropriation made by the Commissioner of Finance. Thank you.
Okay, another red card, 1 minute.
So I spoke directly with the superintendent, and he said he reached out and did not get a response. So I tend to believe our superintendent. That aside, there was an ask on behalf of the school, and we were ignored. The resolution, and I truly wish I brought it with me. Maybe I'll post it, or people can go to the website or to the city website. But it was more than just asking us for a school resource officer. And it created an environment of negativity, and that is what I have the biggest problem with, is the environment of negativity that brought. There were residents that were there that didn't feel heard at a city council meeting with regards to this issue, asking the city council to reconsider.
Okay, so you do have another red card if you want to finish your remarks. No? Okay. All right, next question. We have time for one more question and then 3 yes and no answers. Okay? And then closing statements. So this question goes first to Patty. What have you done to deal with the climate crisis so far, and what do you plan to do as far as possible within your capacity as Commissioner of Finance for the climate crisis?
Well, I'm not in the role of Commissioner of Finance at the moment, so I can't speak to what I've done. However, it does come down to a couple of things. When it comes to our smart cities, our current plan is outdated. We need to be more focused with targets for our smart city plan. And so I would look to do that. Personally, I have been involved with Sustainable Saratoga. I would look to make sure that that relationship with the city continues and grows. That is an amazing resource. They actually are the ones that brought us the solar park as an initiative. So I would look to Sustainable Saratoga. I would look at what we can do with regards to our infrastructure and I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. Can you just repeat it one more time?
Sure. What would you like? How would you deal with the climate crisis if you were commissioner, as far as possible, in your capacity?
Well, it really, what it comes down to is making sure we have the technology and the budget to handle crisis, should they arise, and some of the resources. Right now, we have our water source hasn't had a water study since 1988. So I would look at making sure that I was working with all the departments on initiatives that would protect their services, for example, when it comes to public safety.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So there's so much. I have project managed the 8,000 solar panels out on the Weibel Avenue landfill, and while I've heard that my opponent goes door to door saying this is actually a sustainable Saratoga project, this is actually a City of Saratoga Springs project in partnership with both Sustainable Saratoga, NYSERDA, and the Governor's New York Sun program. But I project managed that for 5 years. As a matter of fact, it almost went bankrupt in the middle of it, and I was heartbroken. I thought we weren't going to make it happen. Sun Edison went bankrupt, and Onyx Renewables came in and purchased the program. And so I'm very pleased that we have 8,000 solar panels, saving the city $70,000 to $100,000 a year, et cetera, et cetera. But there's other things. I brought forward the Paris Climate Accord to the City Council for adoption, and actually it was stronger than the one in the Paris Climate Accords. We made ours in line with the Governor's REV program, which is called Renewing the Energy Vision. Recently I brought to City Council the purchase of 2 electric vehicles. I want to start adopting our fleet, replacing old vehicles with electric vehicles, and we'll start implementing electric vehicle charging stations. Our smart city plan is not out of date. I only started the Smart City Commission about 4 years ago, and I've already put out a version 2.0. And that plan is what led to a company contacting me to enable us to put fiber in the ground. I want to work very hard to bring downtown public space recycling. I've been trying to get this off the ground for years, but it's been a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. I'm hoping with the help of Sustainable Saratoga and some Skidmore College students, we can make that a reality too. There's a lot we're doing. Community choice aggregation is the other really big one that will help all residents in the community lower their energy costs and also buy into a completely green, renewable energy project. Now, if you want to opt out, you can.
Thank you.
But you do brown ink.
Okay. Any other, okay. We're ready to go on to a yes and no question. We have 3 here. Obviously, the questioner may not have wanted this to be yes or no, but it's a question of time. So, do you believe, and this goes first to Michelle. Yes. Yes or no? Do you believe the hospital has a right to change their zoning and expand into a residential neighborhood?
Yes,
And,
based on the comprehensive plan.
and Patty? Is it on?
No.
Okay. And next question. Do you agree that there should be charter change? And this is Patty first. She said yes.
Yes. That's up to the voters through referendum.
Okay, up in here. Okay. Last question. Will you serve out your full term? Excuse me?
I answered it the way I wanted to answer it.
She's right. She can answer it however she wants. Yes, no, or in between.
Thank you. It was in between. It's up to the voters.
Please. Will you please, will you pledge to serve, this goes to, I don't remember, I think it goes to Michelle first, right? Will you pledge to serve out your full term before seeking another office?
Of course. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. Patty?
Should I be elected Commissioner of Finance, I will step down from the school board and take my new role.
Okay, good enough. Now we are ready for closing statements, and audience, you've been very patient. Again, thank you for your questions. We start with Patty, closing statement, 1 minute.
Politics affect us most at the local level. So when decisions affecting our community are made without a voice for the people, we naturally tune out. This has happened in Saratoga Springs. I know this because I've knocked on over 3,000 doors since March. Citizens do not feel heard, nor do they feel represented. My style is to bring together people to have the conversation and to represent them. I have experience managing major budgets, high-profile projects, project teams, and getting the business of day completed on time with results all members can be proud of. I am running a grassroots campaign. My opponent is heavily funded by the developers and special interest. This is an important election. Thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us. And on November 5th, I humbly ask for your support and vote so together we can make the changes needed to strengthen our city.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just put that up, right? Okay. Closing statement, Michelle.
Thank you. So in closing, again, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this candidate forum, my opponent Patty, and all of you for spending the evening with me tonight. I'm proud of my record of accomplishments on behalf of this great city, and proud that I've had the opportunity to represent the constituents every first and third Tuesday of the month doing city business, and every day in between. My background in finance and libraries prepared me well for this position, and it has served me. I've been blessed to work with so many wonderful people at City Hall, and in particular in the finance and IT departments. Again, I always use the word humbly myself. I ask for your vote on November 5th. I have much left that I would like to accomplish. As I said, fiber on every city street, community choice aggregation, a residential program that requires a city ordinance to drop energy costs for residents. Again, I'm pleased to be endorsed by 3 parties for this election on November 5th, Working Families, Independents, SAM, the Serve America movement, and I ask that all Saratogians vote for me on these lines so I may continue work on behalf of you all. I have raised a lot of money, and I will say my major contributors are the unions, the labor unions.
All right. I just want to thank you for coming.